It's definitely a fine line. You gotta, like, I feel like reading the room is the most important thing. I feel like you see someone stream, you see that they're going crazy, that they're like super excited. Everyone in chat is talking about this very specific thing. And if you bring in just something that feels out of the blue, if you need to do it, that's different. You know, I feel like you could unnecessarily trigger someone, you know? And I think that's the finest line. Whereas, like, if we are having, like, an obvious mental health conversation, or we just started stream or something along the lines, like, knowing that it's a very, I agree with Parker, it's a very fine line, because I don't want people to feel like they can't just come into my stream and I'm having a rough day. I struggle with this. Like, this sucks. Like, this is making me, like, awful today. And it's like, I'm so sorry. That sounds absolutely disgusting. Like, that's what I hope to, like, be there for. And at the same time, it's, like, can really trigger some people. Like, specifically for me, when, with my eating disorder, like, people came in and started talking about weights and calories one time. People started having a conversation about that. And I know. And I was like, all right, guys, like, I can't have this conversation. And they kept going, you know. This was a long time ago. It's a long time ago. And they were like, oh, I'm sorry, Cece, but then this, and this. And I was like, guys, this isn't cool. I'm not okay with this. This is very triggering for me, and I had to explain why. And eventually, like, once I explained why, people were like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, or at least tried to get it, you know? And I feel like that's sort of the same thing with whatever you come into a stream with. You have to be aware that sometimes you might have to have tough conversations that aren't necessarily about what you were trying to bring to the table, if that makes sense. So if you come in saying that, you know, like your what happened on your friend's stream where they, my dad died, and they had on mental breakdown. Like, you don't, just like with everything, I feel like you don't know what necessarily is going to happen in those situations. So recognizing that if you bring something in like that, like, you could get something in return that is terrible as well. So it's more recognizing that when you bring something to the table, you brought it to the table, and so it will be addressed in a way that streamer can handle. You know, it could trigger them a certain way. It could trigger you a certain way. You know, I feel like when you're talking to someone, even if, like, a random person, if you're struggling with that, if you say, like, my dad just died, and you're just talking to a random person about it, obviously it must be some sort of cry for help, need for something, anything, you know? And it's like, maybe that person didn't have anyone. And that's why I'm like, okay, well, is there anything I can do to just be here and chill with you? Like, I feel like that's the I can do. And at the same time, someone else might not give them the same reaction that I would give them. You know, it's like you're taking a risk when you go into someone's chat and you talk about something like that, especially right away. Like, if one of my regular streamer, like, friends, like, people in chat, were to come in and say something, then it's like, oh my gosh, well, I know you as a person. Like, I feel like I can actually not help, but, like, be there for you and help and console you if you need consoling. Whereas if it's someone random, it's like, I don't know what to do. And they brought it into the space, so it's something that you can't really fault yourself for not knowing what to do. It's like, do is just, and at least that's what I try to tell my.
Yeah, well, I think, like, you know, something that we're dealing with here, to just put it bluntly, is no judgments necessarily on the value of this, but, like, people do a lot of what they do and say a lot of what they say in these live streams so that they can get attention, specifically from the streamer. You know, I saw a situation exactly like you know what? Oh, Kitty!
Kitty!
Exactly like what was describing. A person just like came in and said this, and they were asking the streamer kind of for advice about like, well, now what am I going to tell my kids, because I'm now going to have to raise them by myself, and I don't, and I was like, hey, I'll send you this like thing that I know, like, I happen to like remember reading something about like single parenting and grieving and all that sort of stuff, and sudden loss of a spouse with kids, and was like, here, like, I'll whisper you this link if you want it. And that person never responded to my message to say, hey, thanks for sending that or anything. So I was kind of like, I don't know that they were necessarily inventing a tragedy, but it's interesting that people feel that what's going to make them feel better is like attention from a celebrity. And I think sometimes people do try to use tragic circumstances to get that kind of attention, because it does get attention. It cuts through all of the other stuff people are saying that's being acknowledged. And I think it speaks to sort of how people are kind of wired these days. Like, it's just like, I really feel like, and this really started happening with MySpace and Facebook a while back. Maybe back in the old days of like LiveJournal and stuff, it was there too, to a degree, but I think more so with these like social platforms we have now, it's drugs.
Right.
The interaction that you get from what you say on the internet directly affects your neurochemistry, and people are coming to Twitch and coming to stuff to get dopamine, to get serotonin, whether or not they're aware. I mean, I don't think people are really aware that this is what's happening. And, I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, but those chemicals are addicting. We aren't getting them a lot from real life, because life on this planet right now sucks. And people are people are trying to connect in an age of isolation and don't know how to do it because we become so reliant on the machinery.
Right.
And point is, I feel that, like, to kind of go back to the question about how to be more considerate, like, people really need to be aware of that vein tapping urge. Like, instead of just barreling into a stream to get that dopamine, to say something and be paid attention to by the streamer at all costs. And I think that motivates people to say all kinds of like weird and stupid and rude and unnecessary spammy shit, like it's just like, you see it a lot in ASMR streams, like live streams on YouTube and Twitch, where a user will just pop in and they'll be like, can I get a shout out, will you say my name, like, and I'm like, doesn't that make it feel less nice when somebody does it just because you told them to? But and so like you said, read the room, and Parker as well, like, listen, like, get some sense of where you are before you start spouting your mouth off. Maybe try to get a sense of what kind of community you're in, how those people are. And I'm not saying like conform to exactly the way other people are talking, because you see enough of that anyway. Like, I'm never going to go into a stream, and I'm not judging, but I will never, that doesn't mean I'm going to go into somebody's environment and like completely like derail the conversation with something that doesn't make any sense just because I want somebody to acknowledge me. If I'm like somewhere and what I'm there for is being, and yeah, there's a large part of that in why I attend the streams I do, because people pay attention to me, and it's nice attention, and they actually listen to me, and I like that. I'm not gonna try to pretend that that's not a component of why I do this. But if I go somewhere and there's too many people in there, or they don't feel like interacting with somebody like me, they don't acknowledge the things I say, then I'll just go somewhere else. I'm not going to sit there and spam the same thing over and over again until they see it. I'm not going to like force anybody to interact with me, because then the interaction doesn't mean anything, The other thing about being considerate is like, sort of like, every single person in one of these places including the content creator, they're not a deity, not that kind of creator, right? Like they're
Right.
it's human beings in a sense. Some of us may feel like little aliens, but like we are people, and so like too much glamorizing, too much idolizing, it's bad for people. So like don't impose that on people and do that to them. The over sexualization too, and a number of things that I think this kind of fetishization of content creators is it's dehumanizing in the end. And I just kind of want to be like, your need to feel like you know a celebrity, don't let that create a Frankenstein monster. Don't be stripping other people of their humanity so that you can make them an object that
Right.
inflates your ego. I don't know if that makes sense, but like I kind of see that happening. I'm like, just chill out. You don't need to try so hard. You don't need to do this to people. Just like hang out and talk to the people in the chat that are like cool. And when people say hi to you, don't fucking ignore them because you don't think they're popular enough to talk to. Because you might be surprised. You never know like what people have in terms of what they can offer you as your friend or somebody that you've been nice to. Why don't you come to this wonderful realm of the internet where you can be anything you want with all these like weirdos and just enjoy exploring that?
We consider Twitch a potential complement to treatment, a way to lower the threshold to seek professional help, and a platform that can be used, that is already being used to reduce stigma surrounding mental health. Do you think mental health should be talked more about on streams?
I do. And at the same time, I feel like maybe more licensed professionals have access to streaming, or make sure that that's something that's available. Because I feel like when it comes to people coming to Twitch as a way to, I feel like I am not professionally trained. I am not a therapist. So if I were to be, if people were to be coming to me and expecting me to be a therapist, like that's kind of scary and terrifying for me, because I don't have the proper training. I don't have the proper whatever. Like, I want to listen to people. I want to make people feel seen and people feel known. I do think that mental health is important to talk about. But when it comes to me as a person, helping other people recover from different illnesses, I feel like I would not be the best person to help with that. I think what would be awesome is if, more mental health professionals were to get on Twitch and be like, okay, I have these degrees, come get in my chat and we can talk about stuff, and I will talk about like basic techniques, things like that. I think that could be super helpful. However, I feel like if people are struggling with forms of mental illness and they come to someone like me and they think that I will be able to cure them, like I am not trained to do such a thing. I feel like if I were to all of a sudden have that title, have that sort of mental health title, that I would be helping. Not saying that me being a streamer, me conversing and like talking with people and making people feel welcome isn't a help. I just feel like I'm definitely not a therapist. And I think that idea sort of makes me a little bit nervous just for my own stream. However, at the same time, I think the idea of Twitch being a place for people who struggle with mental health and being a place for people to be open and feel like they're listened to and heard is completely different. I feel like if people are struggling with things, they should feel welcome to come into a stream and still vibe and still hang out. You can have literally whatever problems, and I hope that you feel welcome in my stream and that you can hang out with me if you feel like there's nowhere else you can hang out. And if I am a good first step before you go to therapy, before you go do something else, where it's like, okay, I can have conversations with people who are like me or might struggle with things or just are struggling human beings, and then that be the next step to go to therapy and getting better, that'd be freaking amazing. Like, I would that. However, I don't want to like put the label like onto my, you know, like I don't want to say that I can help people who are struggling with their illnesses because I'm not trained to do so. However, if I can make a community to help people who have different illnesses feel welcome and feel less alone, I feel like that's freaking awesome. I feel like that's freaking amazing. And I feel like that's why mental health needs to be discussed more, because there's a lot of people who feel really freaking alone because people are dismissed and ignored. And the thing about Twitch is that you don't have to be alone. You can hang out with people who are like you. And you don't have to trauma dump. You can just be like, I have ADD, and like this is what I do. And it's like this is just me. It's just me, and you're just you, and that's just what it is. Like, it's a part of me. So sometimes I'll talk about it, and it's like cool. It's not uncomfy. It just exists. It just is. Mental health is just a thing that exists. Like, people have different issues. I think that the conversations around them are really important, because it should just turn into one of those things one day that it's just like, I talk about it, and you're obviously not making other people comfortable. It's like, oh, we're just chilling. We're just people. We're living with completely different experiences.
Thank you so much for being part of this.
I love you so much, Eva. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a great day, Cece.
Will do. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Gone for a while. I didn't expect that. It's been only 10 questions. We've been talking 3 hours.
I mean, it's been a really good conversation though. But I will say, in general, I definitely agree with Cece, and it's also like, I think Twitch is. I don't think it should be lumped into any one thing though. Like, I think that's why it's great. I think like there should be more conversation around mental health and whatnot. Yeah, but I don't think it should be like something that people have to take on. Like, I also think there should be, I think people should also have the ability to say like, hey, I don't want to discuss that as well, because that's just not an avenue they want to go down. Maybe they just want to play video games and that's it, and they don't want to talk about those things, and that's super cool. And those aren't the people that I even have problems with. Like, those would be the people that put mental health tags under their thing just to garner more viewers, and then when someone mentions it, they're like, oh, I'm sorry you're feeling bad, like, or like you're not allowed to be sad or whatever. Yeah, so I definitely think it would be good to have more conversations around it and whatnot, and that's definitely something that I'm trying to do. But also on the other hand, it's like what Cece said with not being therapists and whatnot too. It's like there's only so much that we can do, and then I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where live streaming is in maybe even like 2 more years or 5 more years or something like that, and see what can happen with it. Because there are a lot more doctors that are streaming on Twitch and stuff like that, and not giving out advice, but just opening up avenues for conversations and everything, like what Dr. K does. But yeah, I definitely think it'll be interesting to see where it goes. And it's even from watching Twitch 5 years ago, or I can't even believe I can say like 8 years ago, like it's changed so much more. Instead of people being like, yo, we don't talk about that here, to people just having it be a normal thing now. So, I'm excited to see where it goes in the next few years.
I agree.
But with that, I do have to go.
Thank you for being part of this.
Thank you guys for talking
Enjoy
all
your
the kind
food.
words too. Love y'all. Bye.
Ciao. Well, I always think that like more conversation about mental illness and mental health is necessary and important, especially in these times. Think that I'd want to be careful about, because one thing I worry about when it comes to this stuff, because I've seen it a little bit, is people with a platform who definitely aren't experts, but whose advice and whose opinions about things are going to be taken, by their audience. And I really don't want people who don't know what they're talking about dispensing misinformation about these topics, because that is dangerous. That can literally result in death. People sometimes, when they're on a platform and people look up to them, they tend to get a little bit of I don't know, maybe a confirmation bias. I don't know what to call this thing, but they tend to then think that maybe they are like, wise about everything, and they know what that, and they feel pressure to give advice. So, if we can avoid that, but that aside, I think just overall in general, anyone in any kind of public space should, I think we need to, just as people, as societies, as culture, need to be more open about that stuff. There needs to be more dialogue concerning that. People who have mental illness, especially, coming out. Just like it was really important at one point in time for queer people to come out. Like in the 80s when that started being a big thing, they were like, you've got to come out. If you're queer, it is up. You really should. Because otherwise nothing's ever going to change. And I feel like it's the same with mental illness. There's so much stigma around it. People are generally unaware of what mental illness looks and sounds and feels like. So when they have it, they don't realize what's happening. When they encounter somebody with it, they're just going to be off-put, and people just get ostracized. Yeah, because people are like, well, what is that behavior? Or why is this person like this? If we had just sort of like, if more people had a general working knowledge of like what these kinds of things look like, and trauma too, especially like PTSD, because so many people have it that don't know it, and so many people know people who have it and they don't know, and so they're constantly doing things that are like probably really triggering to a lot of people, but they don't have any idea. You might be a little more considerate about those things if you like knew. And so I think that, yes, discussing mental illness openly, especially if you have it and you're a streamer, I think that's a great platform for bringing out awareness to those subjects. And because streamers are looked up to by their audiences so much and emulated and stuff, just like any other kind of celebrity, for especially like these younger people who are, using this platform to connect and to like, sort of, it's kind of how they're learning about the world and how to be a human. If they see that and they learn those things from them, then that's gonna kind of have an effect on that generation. And perhaps we can like raise a new batch of like young adults who are more equipped to understand themselves and the world that they live in. People are kind of merciless, I feel, because they don't understand things like trauma and illness and what a trigger actually is and that sort of thing. But if they see the people they look up to talking about it while they're like shooting the crap out of people on like some first-person shooter or whatever, like, then maybe we can infect the world with some some compassion and some understanding, and maybe it will encourage people to come out themselves and to seek treatment and learn healthy coping mechanisms and all that.
I agree. I don't know. I love this conversation. Thank you as well for being part of it.
I'm surprised that you really weren't expecting that to go on as long as it did, considering.
But it is something like I really wanted to talk, and it is something I want to kind of put more spotlight on as well, because, like you've seen it, I've talked it on my stream. We all four of us talked about it in everyone's stream, like, and it is something that we all believe that should be talked more, and we all have experience, so. There's so much to talk about it regarding this. Like, I personally believe in those are issues and that should be kind of touched on. So, because I started more into that because I kind of pinpoint when my anxiety started. It was like in high school, thanks to one professor, because she kept bullying me mentally and everything. And yeah, it started from there, and then I moved to a new country, and I was really struggling as well. Like, I didn't have money to pay the rent. I had to, like, ration food. I was like, do I pay the rent or do I stay hungry? Things like that. It's been, like, really hard, and that kind of elevated. And I noticed, like, myself being, different towards people that I flame up. You get temperamental because of the stupid things, and like, I kind of started noticing that, and I was like, I really want to see what's causing that. And then I kind of like went into research and realized that I have an anxiety, but my sister agrees with me, so I kind of like did a good job. And I started working on myself, And I started posting more on Instagram and being more open and sharing stuff, you know, like my experience, everybody else's experience, like tips and tricks, because I started following lots of mental health, like support profiles and everything. And like just the amount of people who came back, you know, like I wouldn't expect those people to ever text me, but when I ever post something about mental health, they were like, oh my God, I felt this way as well. Oh my God, thank you for sharing this. You know, they open up, they talk to me, and I was like so surprised that people are actually, you know, like, you know that they're struggling, but at the same time, like not many people would admit it. But lots of people like came back to me and would be like, oh, this makes sense, you know, this actually helped me. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And they would, you know, like it kind of made me talk more now about it. So that's why. Because it's really hard. I was suffering in silence, and then I just decided I you know, it's not healthy. So, and it is like lots of people, I hate that, because people who don't struggle with anything mentally, they just don't realize like how hard it is to open up and to be like, come to someone and be like, hey, I'm not okay, you know. And that's what bothers me, and I want to be part of those people who other people feel safe to come and be like, hey, I'm not okay, do you want to talk, do you want to listen, you know. That's precisely the thing. Yeah,
definitely. Like, you know, it's going to be, I mean, it's a very specific topic in terms of like streaming and mental health, but it is very relevant right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this is definitely like, it's topical, you know, and I think that and it's also like, I mean, I haven't, aside from that article, which I didn't get to read very much of yet, I haven't seen anything else about that yet.
Said,
you know, I mean, this is also something I haven't really thought of until recently, but like, you know, it's something that people are maybe just now starting to talk about, so like, it's good time to get into that discussion.
And as well, like, everybody,
maybe we'll be famous.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because like streaming has been going on, like Twitch has been here for a long time, and it is like in these days, like people are starting more to talk about mental health in the last few years. And like you said, it is something people are starting to talk more, but like on internet you can find more about like, oh, you know, like how to make your Twitch, how to get success on Twitch, you know, how to make overlays and how to get people, but no one actually touches on mental health. And lots of people, like there's lots of streamers, and we've all been through that, we've all experienced that. So I think it should be something.